The thing about Purdy, he has a very aggressive mindset as a thrower, more so than Mac Jones. So he will turn it loose, which at times can result in some forced throws. You see that once in a while, but at other times it results in outstanding window throws versus zone coverage, which is an absolute strength of his game.
I would love to hear your response to something that we've gotten from a lot of fans, which was, sure, Niners won by a lot of points and things were moving, but also because the Cardinals, well, maybe it wasn't because the Cardinals were down by so much, but Jacoby Brissett put up these just gaudy passing numbers in the game. So is that a sign that the defense was not playing well? Was that kind of game script? What would you say to that fan, Greg?
Well, the first thing I would say is, how many times did he throw the ball? I mean, if you throw the ball that many times, you're going to put up numbers. Yeah. I guess my response to that would be, if you're going to throw the ball close to 60 times, did they expect him to complete 10 balls and go 10 for 60 for 100 yards? What do you expect when a guy throws the ball 60 times? He's going to complete balls. They didn't really complete many big plays at all. The 49ers were in total control of the game pretty much from the beginning once they jumped ahead 14-0. We know what their quote-unquote weaknesses are on the defensive side. They do not have a great four-man D-line pass rush. That's not going to change. But just looking at Brissett's numbers, I wouldn't view that as that's something that's wrong, that's different than we knew before that game.
And looking at the film, did you see an even more lean toward the bend but don't break from Robert Saleh, knowing that they were up 14 or 13-0 early?
Yeah, and that didn't surprise me in the least. I mean, don't forget that, they got ahead big and, relatively big, and there was never a sense that they were not in control. So, yes, that's an odd game. That's not a great game, in my view, having done this for a long time and seeing a lot of football and watching tape. That's not a game to really make a true evaluation of their defense. We know what the strengths are. We know what the concerns are. But that's not a game to really say, oh, my God, there's a problem here. We know what they are. We've discussed that. Like I said, they're not going to be any different today than they were last week. They're still concerns.
Greg, we're probably burying the lead. Would love to hear what your impressions were of Brock Purdy. And I mean it specifically this way. In theory, the 8 quarters that we had seen him this year before now, in 6 of them, we're told he was kind of compromised with the toe. And so some balls sailed and things like that. I wonder how you thought he looked as compared to what we had seen earlier in the year.
Yeah, I thought right from the start he played pretty well. I mean, the second possession was, to me, a great example when he hit Jennings for 25 yards. That was a great concept. But, one of the things about the Niners pass game, and I think about this with all quarterbacks, and you guys obviously watch the Niners, but you watch a lot of football. You're not just watching the Niners, I'm sure. And I think about this when I talk to people who always want to talk quarterbacks, is when you see a really well-designed scheme and the receiver by NFL standards is open, like Jennings was on that 25-yard play on the second possession, do you immediately think, oh, that's great quarterbacking? Or do you think, hey, that's a really good scheme and, it becomes pitch and catch? And I think about that a lot because obviously it's a combination. That play became pitch and catch because the scheme. I'll tell you the play to me that really stood out as a great example of to me what Purdy is the 30-yard touchdown that ended the second possession because he checked that. He saw the coverage and he changed the formation and the play call, and he knew that he had linebacker Davis Gaither on Kittle, and that to me was just a great example of understanding what he saw, changing the play, and then he got the matchup that he knew he would get, and it was a touchdown. But I thought Purdy played well. Now, the thing about Purdy, and this is a little different than Mac Jones, so sometimes it's a positive, and every once in a while it's a negative. But he has a very aggressive mindset as a thrower, more so than Mac Jones. So he will turn it loose, which at times can result in some forced throws. You see that once in a while, but at other times it results in outstanding window throws versus zone coverage, which is an absolute strength of his game.
Yeah, a couple of dangerous ones later in that half, but I want to ask you about the third touchdown, the pass to Christian McCaffrey, and the design that you saw where looked like Jennings didn't exactly run a pick, but he kind of cleared out the left side of the defense, and McCaffrey was able to leak out for an easy pitch and catch.
Oh, yeah, the 9-yard touchdown, our
Yep.
first and goal. That was another well-designed concept. That was versus man coverage. Kittle ran right at the linebacker Simon. He collisioned him. Um, some might say that was offensive pass interference, but you know what? It wasn't called, so it wasn't. And he collisioned him, and that prevented Simon from expanding outside to match McCaffrey, who was his coverage responsibility. So that was another well-schemed, well-designed concept that presented a nice, clean red zone throw. There's a number of ways to score in the red zone. I happen to listen to Ben Johnson. I don't listen to a lot of press conferences because I'm watching tape. I just happened to catch this one. Ben Johnson, the head coach of the Bears, and somebody asked him about 50-50 balls because he has two big receivers, on the outside. And he said, I'm not a believer in 50-50 balls. I'd rather scheme plays than just throw a ball up for grabs and hope my guy catches it. And I think Kyle Shanahan has the same school of thought there. And, that's just a great example of scheming up a play. We've seen that a number of times this year. I forget which game it was when McCaffrey caught a 1 or 2 yard touchdown where there was motion. It might have been Mac Jones playing then. I can't remember. But I think Kyle is more of the belief that you scheme it up and try to create a clean throw for your quarterback rather than just throwing it up to a 50-50 ball.
The 49ers are starting to get some continuity and production out of their offensive line that was not there before. What are you seeing that's different there?
Yeah, well, this was a game clearly where, McCaffrey had a little more space. Clearly, Robinson had some space. And if you can get McCaffrey to the second level, say what you want about McCaffrey. I'm sure many of your listeners think he's not the same guy as he was 3 or 4 years ago. And I know that he had a 20-yard run, which is his longest run of the season. But he is a hard runner. He gets hard-earned yards. And we'll see as the season progresses if there continues to be first-level space where he can get to the second level, if indeed he can break one. But he runs hard. There's no difference in that in terms of McCaffrey. He gets tough yards. And we'll see. But I think he's running well. It's funny. I speak to my guys in the matchup room here who, we all watch tape. And I say, do you see any difference in McCaffrey? And they say, no, he looks like McCaffrey. I mean, obviously in the past game, he's really, really good. So he's a totally complete back. I mean, he's on his way to getting, another 1,000-yard rushing, 1,000-yard receiving season, which would make him the only guy to do that in history for a running back. So, but I agree. I think the O-line is gradually starting to look a little better.
You look at Carolina, they don't look to be, in my opinion, a great rush defense. Is this another game where the Niners and Shanahan can really establish a ground game?
I think they try to do that every week.
Yeah, sure.
And obviously, if it works early on, if they feel that they're sustaining offense with the run game, they're going to stay with it and they're going to work off of it. The crazy thing about Carolina is they're coming off a game where Bryce Young had the best game of his career, hands down. And that's not the way he played was great, but that's not normally the way he plays. But again, you're facing a 49er defense that doesn't necessarily get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. But the O-line for the Panthers is not very good. And I would love to see the Niners be able to generate some pressure with a four-man pass rush.
I'd love to hear you expand on Bryce Young. What are we looking at this year and overall with because he does, I mean, he seems better than he used to be. I would love your breakdown.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the team he just played, Atlanta, is nothing like the 49ers defense. Atlanta is a team that is high percentage pressure and high percentage man coverage. And Young had a really good game. Obviously, he handled that well. He had a strong game versus those two things. Empty formations are a major part of the Panthers' pass game. He's had the most empty dropbacks of any quarterback in the NFL up to this point in the season. So, they feel that he'll get it out quick. When you're an empty, obviously, if you truly want to pressure a quarterback when they're an empty, you can do that because there's only five pass protectors. So you can pressure if you choose to. But Young is an interesting guy because he doesn't really have a big arm. He's clearly short. So everything really has to be defined and he has to get the ball out because he's not a guy that can sit in the pocket. And to the term we use for guys like that, he can't really sit on his back foot and drive the football. He's not that guy. So the ball has to come out. He's very dependent on the scheme and throws being presented within the context and structure of the pass game. So in an ideal world, there's multiple ways to deal with that. You can obviously try to take away route concepts and make him have to wait, or you can go after him because he's not really a playmaker. He can make throws on the move, but he's not really a playmaker.
And for the Niners being one of the least blitz-happy teams in football, I had them at third to last. How do you look at the tape and see the 49ers trying to adjust for Carolina going empty? Do they still just rush forward and sit in their cover with 7 sort of approach?
That's a great question. I mean, Robert Saleh up to this point has decided, and again, so much, too, of blitzing has to do with who your players are. Not everybody's a great blitzer, okay? And keep that in mind. We just assume, okay, let's blitz and let's rush the quarterback. Not every linebacker is a great blitzer. Not every safety is a great blitzer. And we know that Bethune, and he's not necessarily a blitzer, but he'll be out with a high ankle strain. By the way, I thought Robinson played pretty good in place of him, but he'll be out, and I think he's played really well in place of Fred Warner. So I wouldn't expect that Robert Saleh is going to be super aggressive with pressure. I think he's going to look to rush for, like I said, against an O-line that's just very uneven when it comes to pass pro, and then just play, coverage on the back end and see how that goes.
What is Carolina's best thing?
Ideally, the run game. Rico Dowdle is a hard runner, gets tough yards. They want to be able to do that. But the one thing they do have, and this will be interesting against the corners of the Niners, is their 3 top receivers are incredibly big.
Yep.
You got Tedero McMillan, who I really, really liked. I loved him coming out of college. He's 6'4". You've got Xavier Legette, who's maybe only 6'1", 6'1.5", but he's built really well. You got Jalen Coker, who's in the 6'2", 6'3" range. So their 3 top wideouts are big, and the 49ers corners are not. So again, we'll see how the Panthers decide to go about attacking that. But McMillan is a really interesting player to me. He's smooth, he's fluid, he's a little faster than you think. You wouldn't call him purely explosive. He's not Justin Jefferson, but he's really kind of a smooth, easy mover. And
you look at the Niners, and they got Ricky Pearsall back. He had just the 1 target and the 1 catch. And I know he's kind of still playing his way back into it. Is it still a case with the Niner offense of, a lot of 21 personnel with Juszczyk in there and relying on George Kittle?
Yeah, well, I don't know if they rely on anyone in the pass game, and I think we've talked about this. I don't think they look and say, you know what, Ricky Pearsall only had 1 target last week. This week we got to get him 10. I don't think Kyle Shanahan thinks like that. My guess is he'll have more than 1, but I don't think they're going to come out and just start feeding Ricky Pearsall the ball, because that's not really the way they play offense. Now, the Panthers on defense, J.C. Horn's a really good player. He's their boundary corner, okay? Michael Jackson, who's got good size, is their field corner. So Horn doesn't match up. They play boundary and field. That's the way they play. We'll see how it maps out. Their pass rush they play a lot of young players. I mean, they've got the rookie Scourton, who plays a ton of snaps as one edge rusher. They've got G.J. Wanham, who's been in the league 4 or 5 years. They don't really have a true big-time edge rusher right now. Well, we'll see if Scourton becomes that guy, but right now he's not that guy.